Hi, in this video, we will discuss semicolons. So let's start. On your official SAT, you're likely to see 5 to 6 questions that require you to identify and correct errors in the use of punctuation. Some tested punctuation rules involve the use of semicolons. Now, what are those rules? Semicolons should only be used to, number one, link independent clauses without a conjunction, right? The green zebra tomato ripens without turning red, comma, it's difficult to know when one is ready to eat, right? So these are two independent clauses. Both of them make sense on their own, but these two independent clauses have been joined using a comma, which is a comma splice, right? We can correct this by replacing the comma with a semicolon, right? So the green zebra tomato ripens without turning red, semicolon. It's difficult to know when one is ready to eat, right? So a comma can't link two independent clauses. For it to link two independent clauses, a comma needs to be combined with a fanboys conjunction. Since the conjunction is not available here, we can use a semicolon instead. Okay, number two. Separate list items that already contain commas. This is important. It should already contain commas. Otherwise, it can't be used to separate list items. Okay. So while United Nations is headquartered in New York City, comma, it also has central offices in Nairobi, comma, Kenya, comma, Geneva, comma, Switzerland, comma, and Vienna, comma, Austria. Now, so we can clearly see what's happening. Nairobi is a city in Kenya, right? So if you're writing Nairobi and Kenya together, we have to use a comma, right? And Geneva and Switzerland has to have a comma in between as well. But Nairobi, Kenya, and Geneva, Switzerland are two items of the list, right? So they have to be separated as well. Here they've used a comma. Now, the excessive use of commas is becoming confusing because the items themselves are using commas then as well. So to separate the items clearly from one another, we will have to use semicolons to separate the items from one another, right? So let's look at the correct one. While United Nations is headquartered in New York City, it also has central offices in Nairobi, comma, Kenya, semicolon, Geneva, comma, Switzerland, semicolon, and Vienna, comma, Austria, right? So make sure that you only add semicolon to a list if it already has commas and it's confusing. If it's not confusing, then you don't really have to add any semicolons. Okay, number one, top 10. Check before and after. Errors are frequently created when semicolons link clauses that aren't independent clauses. Anytime you see a semicolon to link two clauses, be sure to check both. In one of the clauses, if one of the clauses can't stand on its own as a complete sentence, then you've likely spotted a punctuation error. Right. So let's look at the incorrect sentence. Although Manhattan is not one of isn't the first place one might expect to discover new animals, semicolon, scientists identified a unique species of ant between 63rd and 76th Streets in 2012. Right. So here we have two clauses, right? And the second one is obviously an independent clause because it makes sense on its own. But if you read the first one, although Manhattan isn't the first place one might expect to discover new animals, we're kind of left a bit hanging, right? We can't really know, okay, although, but what? What's happening? Can you tell me the whole story? So the sentence on its own doesn't tell you what's happening. Also, at the start of the sentence, we have used although, which is a subordinating conjunction. Now, whenever a subordinating conjunction is used at the start of a sentence, it becomes a dependent clause, right? So the first clause is a dependent clause, the second clause is an independent clause, right? In this case, we can't use semicolons. We have to use a comma because a comma is used to join a dependent and an independent clause. Semicolons are only used to join independent and independent clauses. I hope that's clear by now. Number two, look out for comma splice errors. So a comma splice error occurs when a comma links two independent clauses without a coordinating conjunction. We can often fix these errors with a semicolon, right? So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played professional basketball for 20 seasons. comma, he retired as the NBA's all-time leader in points scored. Now, you have two independent clauses which are joined by a single comma, which is wrong. If you have two independent clauses, you can join them with a semicolon. If you want to join them with the comma, you will have to add a coordinating conjunction such as the fan voice. Okay, let's look at an example. When he returned from the Galapagos Islands in 1835, Charles Darwin brought back a young tortoise named Harriet. She would live for over 170 years before passing away at the Australia Zoo in 2006. So it feels like both of these clauses are independent clauses, right? So if you replace she with Harriet, the sentence makes sense, right? So since they are independent clauses and a comma is used to join two independent clauses, this is wrong, right? We'll have to use a semicolon. And thus, option number D is correct because there a semicolon is used to join these two clauses from each other, join these two clauses together. Right. So this is how you handle questions. Semicolon is an important topic. So if you didn't understand it, make sure you watch both the comma and the semicolons video again. This is it. In the next video, we will cover some other topic.